From the bottom of my throat.
There it is, ladies and gentlemen. This is running out the clock. This is running out the clock. As we always say on this podcast,
I know what people want.
when you're here, you're here. I'm Joseph Craven. Keith Harkins, Chandler Rowling here tonight. I'm sorry, Chandler Rowling, I believe is how you pronounce it.
Chandelier Rollier.
Chandelier Rowling.
Yes, it's actually spelled Rowlande. So
Rowling. Yep.
With an EAUX in there somewhere for some reason.
Lord.
yes, because that's how English works.
My head actually hurts.
REAUX.
Makes an O sound.
My head actually hurts trying to picture this word in my. I can't do it. I cannot do it. Oh, gentlemen, we are past week 9, heading into week 10, the home stretch of the season, and this is almost entirely going to be an SEC East episode because the SEC East is providing some of the strangest storylines that we could possibly think of as far as the season goes. It's weird. The season is weird, and I think it needs some attention tonight. Mm-hmm. Shout out to our friend Ro Hunter, who is copping out on us again. Claimed he was sick. I'm not buying it
again.
Not.
Like his third death.
I mean, look, come on.
Not buying it.
Michael Jordan once played through fever and chills and headaches and all those kinds of things. So I don't see why Ro can't come on a podcast, you know?
Michael Jordan played all of his playoff games with broken legs.
And he averaged 9,000 points a game.
Yeah, and that's just a fact. And he was intentionally fouled every time he touched the ball.
And it was
never called.
Every game was 1-on-5.
Yeah, every single one.
Even
Scottie
the one
Pippen,
he played against the
Scottie
Monstars.
Pippen was his coach. All right, this is running out the clock. First things first, we're going to start things off as per tradition, the way that we always do, with a quick segment we like to call Talking About the Noles. Gentlemen, Clemson destroyed the Noles this past weekend. Chandler, are you surprised?
No.
Keith, are you surprised?
Yes.
Really?
Only the Clemson did not score 60.
Oh! All right, that's going to wrap up this segment.
Clemson.
That's going to wrap up this segment called Talking About the Noles. The next thing we have to discuss is actually a very serious matter, and that is that we have to say goodbye to a team on the podcast. Thank you, Chandler. As some of you may know, our close friends, the Missouri Tigers, they've had to move back out of the SEC, move away from here. This is our send-off for the Missouri Tigers because they are winless in the conference. They had hopes of being number 2, number 3 in the SEC. Instead, they're at the bottom, 0-4, only scoring 88 points in conference and giving up 134 points. Chandler, I'm going to turn this over to you so you can pay some respects to the Missouri Tigers, our fallen friends.
Just to everybody in the crowd tonight, I just want to ask that every head be bowed and every eye be closed. And I just want to see those hands. So just with nobody looking, you know, every head bowed, every eye's closed. I want you to raise your hand, you know, if you thought Missouri was going to actually be decent this year. Nobody's looking. There's no shame. I see that hand. I see that hand. I feel that. I feel that on a spiritual level. All right, we're just gonna play through, one more chorus here, just to give you a chance to admit what you did was wrong, and at this time, just asking you to please accept Coach Saban as your football Lord and Savior.
I honestly was hoping that you would keep going, so I was going to say that Joseph and I were going to be down front to accept people. who wanted to turn their football hearts and minds over.
Anyone that has any questions, any Missouri supporters out there that have questions, they just feel like they want to go ahead and make this commitment tonight.
Oh man.
Oh my! I didn't anticipate this.
Is this Top Gun?
Yeah,
next year the Missouri Tigers will be back, better than ever, hot on the recruiting trail. No, they're gonna be bad next year also.
Yeah, probably so.
I think their coach is probably gonna get fired. But the Baptist Youth Group invitation still stands. You know, just raise that hand. We've got counselors down front to talk to you about your football selections and
Modern Baptist Church.
You know, we don't want to push anything on you. We just want you to see, you know, how beautiful the Tide really is. It's never too late. Roll Tide.
Yep. Thank you,
Missouri.
Thank you to the Apostle Paul for delivering that message.
The Apostle Paul and old Saint Nick.
Oh God.
Oh, good grief. All right, we're going to do our segment where we give credit to maybe where there's not been enough credit due. If that's the worst way I could have worded that. That was really pathetic English sentence structure. But anyway, we're going to do that segment in just a second. Gentlemen, I'll give you a moment to gather your thoughts if you need to. And I'm going to run through the Week 9 scoreboard recap right quick like.
This week's scoreboard, of course, brought to you by Young Sheldon.
Yeah, Young Sheldon on CBS, America's #1 comedy amongst somebody, somewhere.
Amongst that key 13 to 14 demographic.
Amongst that demographic of people who watch CBS named Sheldon and want something to relate to. Vanderbilt got their first conference win, beating Arkansas 45-31. Georgia hangs on to the #1 spot in the East, beating Florida 36-17. We'll talk more about that later on. They kind of pulled away at the end. It was a entertaining game for like 3/4 of it for sure. Kentucky pulled off a comeback to defeat Missouri 15-14 on a last-second touchdown, maybe aided a little bit by referees, and we will discuss that more.
The Tuscaloosa Buffalo Wild Wings cheered uproariously when Kentucky scored that touchdown.
That's
probably because they were having visions of playing Kentucky in the SEC championship. But
oh yeah, they're sitting there going, "Please," they're ignoring the fact that Kentucky is like the #1 defense in the country right now. Yeah,
and Alabama will score 70 on it.
Oh yeah, no questions asked. Mississippi State defeated ranked Texas A&M 28-13 in what was a battle of two good defenses. And South Carolina held off Tennessee, made a comeback, and scored a late fourth quarter field goal to defeat the Volunteers 27-24 over there in the SEC East. That's the scoreboard for this past week 9 in conference play. I'm going to turn it over to you, Chandler, first and foremost, for someone that you think deserves a little bit of credit that maybe is not getting the credit that they deserve.
I would like to give credit to – I'm actually not sure who it was. I saw this video on Twitter. I believe it was Georgia Southern, who, after winning whatever game it was they played, they decided to celebrate with their mascot, who was a live bald eagle. And it went about as well as you thought it would go. So big shout out to that eagle and to Georgia Southern, I think, maybe Georgia State, whoever it is. It was pretty funny.
Yeah, they beat Appalachian State, man.
And the only reason I'm giving it to them is because I've already given credit to Gardner Minshew, because that dude rules.
Yeah, that he does. Keith, who is someone that is on your mind then?
Gonna give a shout out to Mark Stoops. Not because he has his I think now 11th ranked Kentucky Wildcats at 7-1, 5-1 in the Eastern Conference, and having a big time showdown with Georgia. Maybe the most important game that Kentucky's ever played in the month of November, just as a school. Not for that, but for actually jumping like 10 feet into the air and crowd surfing on his players in the locker room after the Missouri victory. It was hilarious, and the crazy WWE Kentucky player was going nuts again. So, yeah, props to Mark Stoops for his major jump game.
Yeah, didn't expect him to have those sort of ups to get up there and do it comfortably. Well, you guys have actually already mentioned two guys that I wanted to give credit to in Mark Stoops, but I feel like he's getting enough credit. I did want to give credit to Gardner Minshew, who went specifically 40 of 50 passing to lead Washington State to victory over the Stanford Cardinal, who were looking for that upset. Washington State ranked 10th in the country, so also some shout out to that whole program.
Go Cougs.
And the air raid out there.
Old Crimson, waving proudly.
But I did want to give one little shout out as well, or not shout out. I just want to revisit this because we're talking about incredible quarterbacking performances. One of my favorite current NFL quarterbacks, Deshaun Watson, on Thursday night, speaking of great percentages, went 16 of 20 for 239 yards and 5 touchdowns.
Seems decent.
He had more touchdowns than incompletions. That's interesting.
That's Tagovailoa-esque.
Yeah.
Good numbers, yeah.
That is interesting. Deshaun
Watson just got 3 more Heismans.
Yeah, I want to give a big shout out to Chad Kelly for getting the trespassing part of playing quarterback now.
Yes,
he really has gotten that going quite well. And
one extra bonus shout out because we're mentioning Gardner Minshew on Sunday Night Football. Demario Davis came out and announced Demario Davis, Brandon High School. So shout out to Brandon High School in Brandon, Mississippi for having. Yeah.
Big week for the Bulldogs.
Yeah, what a week for the Bulldogs, getting a shout-out on Sunday Night Football, having their alum Gardner Minshew. He's still leading the nation in passing, if I'm not mistaken.
I'm assuming so.
So, very impressive, very impressive.
But I'd also like to give another shout-out to our Brandon, Mississippi native for hosting a great SEC sports podcast. So, good job, Chandler.
Yeah, and when did you graduate from Brandon High School?
Never.
Exactly.
Shout out to Jackson Prep alum Chandler.
Yeah. What's up?
Rollings.
All right, let's move along and go back to, I don't know, whatever this podcast is supposed to be about. The SEC. Here we go. Very as we mentioned, this whole season has not gone the way that we really anticipated that it would in specifically the SEC East. The East has proven to be the more unpredictable side of the conference. And this is not necessarily anything new. Like for a while now, you've kind of had the West was either Alabama or LSU. And then every now and then, like Auburn would sneak in as well, you know. But it was one of those things where you kind of just knew the West was going to be top heavy. And I'm talking about, when I say like all of this, I mean in like the 2000s. Because if you go back to like the 90s, it was only LSU.
Shout out to Silverchair and their song Anthem for the year 2000.
Yeah, this is the most shout out episode we've ever had.
Because they are the youth and they will take your fascism away.
So this is a very, very interesting, year for the East, because for the East for a while, as mentioned, the West, you kind of knew you had some top heavy and then you had like the rest of the group. And in the East, it's been a little bit more balanced. A lot of times Florida would like be clear-cut favorites during like the, Urban Meyer years, especially there. But the East has just proven to be unpredictable. And that's the case here. If you go back to all of our predictions at the beginning of the season, as far as like who finishes where, most of us felt like Georgia was number one there. Keith did go with the Florida Gators, but he had Georgia number 2. So like it's, Georgia favorites there, but you see a lot of South Carolina and Missouri love.
Whoops.
Yeah, our bad. You see across the board us thinking Vandy finishes last, and right now they're actually above Missouri, who doesn't have a conference win. Just a weird year in the East in general. So let's look first and foremost at the teams. I'm actually, if you two are looking at the outline that we have here, I'm going to jump to the bottom, to one of the bottom points here. I'm going to jump to the point about South Carolina and Missouri. These have to be considered, these two teams, two of the biggest disappointments in recent memory. It maybe not as much South Carolina because like they're still hanging on to the 4th spot. But Missouri especially. But these were two teams that had hopes of taking advantage of what looked like maybe a down year in the East. And, you know, maybe taking advantage of Georgia losing players like Roquan Smith, you know, stuff like that. But instead, these two teams in particular have not at any point in time looked like contenders. And especially with Missouri not having a conference win at all. I mean, how much of a disappointment is this? And Chandler, I'm gonna start with you because you mentioned earlier you feel like it's enough of a disappointment that it's going to cost some coaches their jobs over there in Missouri in particular.
Look, I'm just saying that when it comes to Missouri, I never knew that we were living in a world with a mind that could be so sure, and I never knew that we were living in a world with a mind that could be so small. These, of course, are the prophetic words of the band Silverchair, who I've just referenced.
Yeah,
and it seemed like
we all knew that. All of us listened to a lot of Silverchair.
Yeah,
so we knew that.
I was very angsty in the year 2000.
They sang the song "Photograph," right?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. And when you look at that photograph every time, it makes you laugh. Just go ahead and mute me.
I've actually lost the will to mute you. That's how disappointed I am.
Okay, so Missouri and South Carolina are a little bit different cases to me. Dave Odom went into the season on a bit of a hot seat anyway because they were pretty bad last year, and you could kind of look at Missouri and see, okay, here's a way that they actually turn out to be pretty good because they do have a really good quarterback. Going into the season, it seemed like they had a really good quarterback. I think I'll be interested to see what it does to his draft stock as I talk to my NFL guys.
All those connections, yeah.
But you know, I think that you know you could kind of look and see, you know, hey, if their defense is a little better, and if a few things click, they could be really good. And if not, they still are kind of in that territory of being really bad. And I mean, they're pretty clearly in the territory of being really bad. And I think that you know, Dave Odom is a Dave Odom.
That's Barry Odom.
Huh?
Barry Odom.
Oh, Dave Odom is the South Carolina coach that died, right?
I don't know who Dave Odom is, but Barry Odom's the minister.
Dave Odom was a basketball coach, and he coached at Wake Forest in South Carolina, and I believe he passed away. My bad. Anyway, Barry Odom, or whoever, whatever his name is, it doesn't really matter because we're not going to remember it after this season.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, he was kind of already on the hot seat, and you kind of looked and thought, well, you know, they might be in a place to move up, and they might be in a place to stay the same or even get worse. And you know, I think that even staying the same is because didn't they finish like 7-6 last season and kind of ended the year strong, and here they are.
I think they started out like 2-6 or 2-5, and then just won a bunch of games at the end or something.
Yeah. So I mean, this can't be the season that anybody really hoped that Missouri would have, especially when you have the potential number one pick, or at least the first quarterback taken in the draft. Although it seems like the mantra is now that Justin Herbert might be the guy at Oregon. But yeah, I mean, that's got to be disappointing. And then you know South Carolina. I mean, it just like you looked and thought, okay, you know, Jake Bentley's pretty good. He's been hurt some. You know, Debo Samuel's back. He's healthy. And those guys aren't bad, but they're just not. I mean, like I don't know what it is. I mean, maybe it's just Will Muschamp's not that great of a coach. I don't know what it is.
I don't know. Yeah, I mean, it's not like we had any past coaching experience with Will Muschamp to base any of that on. You know.
Yeah, but the asterisk there is that nobody since Urban Meyer was successful at Florida, and so. I don't know, man. I mean, South Carolina is just weird. And I mean, I think we'll learn a lot about what kind of program South Carolina is as they go and play Ole Miss this weekend. It's really hard it's really hard to know what to say about either team other than they've been massive, massive disappointments.
Right, and that's the ultimate thing. I mean, you looked into it. They both felt like, and this is one of our major talking points before the season started. We looked at the East and said, well, Georgia should be the favorites. Does Georgia lose too much on defense? Can one of these other teams, take advantage? And we didn't expect Kentucky to be the team that takes advantage. We didn't expect Florida. Well, I guess we kind of expected Florida to be okay. We didn't expect Florida to, going into last week to give Georgia a big push necessarily. We expected it to be, well, South Carolina has a lot of experience returning and Missouri has a lot of experience returning. Missouri has been plagued by injuries. I mean, some of their top receivers got hurt and have been out for a couple of weeks now. That were really kind of the focal points of their offense. But Keith,
I think real quick, I think a mistake that we make a lot of times is that we look at experience and think, wow, we overvalue experience. That it's like, oh, they've got all these guys coming back, but if all those guys coming back were terrible, then
well, and that's the difference is that South Carolina had a lot of experience coming back on a 9-4 team.
Yeah.
That was second in the conference, and that's the kicker. There is that they were second in the East last year and didn't capitalize. Keith, we mentioned old Barry Dave Odom a minute ago. He was a guy that Missouri embraced because he was an assistant when Gary Pinkel was there, and when Pinkel retired, they were very excited to promote Odom to that position because I think that was Pinkel kind of had been training him to take over. So he was a guy that was supposed to take over. When you have that emotional connection to a coach, how much time do you think that buys you, considering this is his, third season, I think?
That's right.
And so Keith, how much time do you think that buys you in today's game?
Yeah. Maybe an extra year if things are going poorly. If things are kind of up and down, then I think it gives you a little more leeway. But if things are going very, very, very poorly from the outset and there's no real evidence that things are getting better, which seems to be the case at Missouri, given the what have you done for me lately sort of culture of college football and just sports in general, it doesn't matter how much everybody likes you because, personally they can love the guy. They think he's a good coach, but it might just not be a good fit for whatever reason. And so, I think most ADs and programs are doing a better job nowadays of kind of separating that, whether you consider that to be cutthroat or not. It's oddly enough, college football being a amateur sport, it's still technically a business. So they have to make business decisions. But, I think that there's a lot of optimism coming out of last year, and they were returning a good bit of the same team. And through injury and just underperformance by their defense specifically, they haven't really done a good job of giving their offense a whole lot to work with. They just haven't done what they were supposed to be doing.
Yeah. And let me ask you this quick question. We had discussed this in our group texting with each other weeks back. We were discussing how much time is a healthy amount of time to give a coach in the modern game. Our coaches getting fired too quickly. We kind of had this discussion going on, and what do you think? Because I think the general assessment is by the third year, you should see enough of a blend of getting that coach's scheme in, getting some of the players he wants to see a little bit of something. And because you're never actually going to see exactly what a new coach brings until his, fourth year, just because of how recruiting cycles work. Just a technically speaking sort of aspect. That's not saying all coaches deserve 4 years, but that's saying that's when you can actually see it. So Keith, into the third year, you're looking at a team that went 4-4 in the conference last year and now is currently winless in the conference thus far. I mean, is this just a flat out bad hire? I mean, what do you think about this situation?
Yeah, I think the surge that Missouri got last year buys him a little extra grace. This year's been bad, but they can realistically point to injuries and the surprise emergence of teams like Florida and Kentucky to say, we didn't have our best year, but there are a lot of outside influences.
Do you think we would even be having this conversation if Kentucky doesn't get that last second touchdown?
Right. Probably not, because that's a huge win. That's a top 15 ranked team that you beat at home. And then you kind of go into a little more of a relaxed part of your schedule. So I've always thought that the third year is really the first year where you can take stock of your coach and hope to see some tangible evidence of improvement on and off the field, unless things are just the most enormous dumpster fire ever recorded. Typically you're going to give a coach 3 years and then see where he is from there.
And I guess, I don't know, it's tricky because there is so much that goes, against Missouri this year. I'm looking back over things. I mean, they started the season off 3 straight wins before having to go, having to play Georgia. And it's like, well, I mean, it's Georgia. You kind of expect to lose that game. But then to have South Carolina be a winnable game, that's a 2-point loss. Then to have to play Alabama. I mean, you look back on the schedule, they've played the top 2 teams in the conference already.
Yep.
And they have the honor and privilege of playing the top 2 teams in the conference this year, which sucks.
Yeah.
But the rest of the schedule, I mean, their next game is at Florida, who's doing well this year.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, let's just say that Odom is able to secure a few wins here, because he does have Vanderbilt, Tennessee, and Arkansas to end the year, 3 of the other bottom-dwelling teams. But, I mean, if he can't put up a fight, or if it's just unfortunate against Florida and he does win those other 3 games, is that enough to save his job, you think? I'll start with you, Keith, since you're up right now, but I want to hear Chandler's thoughts too.
I think if he has a good showing against Florida and then picks up 2 of your last 3 wins, I think he's good. You have to look at their schedule and their record in context. They're a 4-4, but they're also 4 points away from being 6-2, with wins against 2 SEC East teams, and your only loss is coming against number 2 and number 1 in the country. Everyone's going to lose those games, basically.
Right.
I think that they'll take all of that into account. And then again, as long as you don't get blown out by Florida, and then win 2 of your last 3 games, I think he's good going into next year.
All right, Chandler, what's your assessment? What's it going to take for Barry Odom to keep his job there? Or do you think it's one of those things where they're looking at it and saying, no matter what happens, we need something new?
Well, so this season obviously has a lot of story left to be written.
Sure.
But right now in year 3, his career, he's 15-18 at Missouri, and he's 6-14 in conference. And like you already said, they're 0-4 in conference right now. Now they do have a couple of I won't say easy games coming up, but they have some winnable. They have some winnable games coming up. I mean, Vanderbilt. No, they already played Vanderbilt, Tennessee, and Arkansas. They got those games coming up, and
no, they
They play Vandy at
Yeah.
Florida.
Oh, they still play Vandy.
Yeah, they play Florida next, then Vanderbilt, then at Tennessee,
Oh,
then
that's right.
Arkansas.
Okay. I see. At Florida, at Vanderbilt. Okay. So yeah, so they've got three winnable games left, but you know the question is, and I think it's a similar situation. It's a similar situation that Ole Miss is in right now because you know Barry Odom played football at Missouri.
Right.
He was a linebacker there, and you know, so he just was kind of like a Missouri guy through and through, and he'd been on the staff under Barry Odom, under Gary Pinkel, and it was just kind of like, okay, well, we'll just promote this guy, but he has no head coaching experience. He has no experience running a program, anything like that before he got this particular job. And so
this is his learning curve.
Yeah.
Right here.
And so I think a lot of fans, and I say this because I know so many Missouri fans, I know exactly zero.
They're all your NFL scout friends.
They're my NFL guys. They're my NFL guys.
That's how many Missouri fans there are, though. So,
but it's frustrating. It's frustrating for a fan base to hire somebody who doesn't have experience as a head coach.
Sure.
Especially when you're the SEC, you're supposed to be the best conference in the country.
Hello, Will Muschamp.
Hello, Will Muschamp. Hello, Matt Luke. Hello, the discussion we're having about Barry Odom right now. It's a thing. You know, you don't need to do that. In fact, Kirby Smart might be the only guy that it's really worked out for, and there just aren't that many guys. If I'm not mistaken, Sylvester Croom had never been a head coach before. Ed Ogeron at Ole Miss had never been a head coach before. And, Ogeron's turned it around, but he had some time to go and be at different programs and things like that. So when you bring in a guy who doesn't have any experience, you're asking him to lead your program, that's frustrating enough. And so even if he's your guy, even if he's a Missouri guy through and through, whatever, that's still a really frustrating thing. And to kind of make it through the end of 2017 and think, oh, okay, maybe we've turned some things around. Maybe some stuff's going differently. And then here you are after week 9 and you're 0-4 in the conference. I don't know the psyche of a Missouri fan, but I have a hard time seeing how any fan base would be really excited about that if he's one of, quote, your guys or not.
Right. It's a difficult situation because then it comes down to what are the expectations with the program. It's not like it's a program that has this super rich history in terms of football. They had,
and yet at the same time, it's a program that immediately came to the SEC and won the East 2 years in a row.
Exactly, and that's the thing there. That's what's so weird about it.
It's almost like they're becoming a victim of their own success right now because hey. Yes, they won the SEC East 2 years in a row, and that was awesome. That's great for them. But it was a bad SEC East. There wasn't anybody there that was
like Iowa State probably got to come in and gotten like second in the East.
But still, you did it, and now you're not you're not even close to sniffing it. You're not even being competitive with the teams that are up there in the conversation.
Yep.
So
yep. I'm going to throw a total curveball and ask you guys a question that we had not had on the docket to discuss at all. But as far as the East goes right now, if you just want to give a quick snippet before we keep going, what's been the biggest surprise to you so far with the SEC East? I'm going to go back to Chandler just, because that was the normal order of things. And I committed a crime by going Keith and then Chandler a second ago. So back to Chandler. Chandler, what's been the most surprising thing to you about the East?
Kentucky.
Yeah.
Everything. We're going into November with Kentucky in the top 10, and they're playing a game that's going to determine the fate of the SEC East. And you could tell me, hey, Kentucky's going to be better, and I would believe you. You could tell me, hey, Kentucky's going to be playing for the SEC East in November, and I'm like, no, you're an idiot. I don't believe you at all.
That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard.
And yet here they are.
Yeah, I had Kentucky not in the top 4 of the East. but mostly because I had higher expectations for South Carolina and Missouri. You know, like I had South Carolina and Missouri finishing 2 and 3. And obviously that is not really the case, especially with Missouri, but right now with South Carolina either. But Keith, what's been the biggest surprise for you? Is it the same thing?
Yeah. I think overall, you could realistically give it to Florida or Kentucky. For me, it's how Kentucky's doing it. They are finding ways to win games that they probably shouldn't have won. They are incredibly one-dimensional on offense, but their defense is so good. Kentucky, to me, this year reminds me a lot of like the old, like really good LSU teams, and that their defense keeps them in every game, no matter how much they might struggle on offense. So, we said it before, they have a really good scoring defense. First in the SEC, they've only given up 74 points so far this year, 20 less points than Alabama. So that's super impressive. So good for them. But I would also say LSU.
Well, we're talking about the East specifically.
The East? Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
sorry.
Scratch that.
Well, in talking about Kentucky, and that ties into the conversation about Missouri right now. Kentucky was Stoops' first year in 2013. They went 2-10. Then they went 5-7, 5-7. And so, there's year 3, and you're kind of looking and you're like, well, that's not really any improvement. Then 16 and 17, he goes 7-6, and the frustration was still mounting. And now here they are in 18 is 7-1. So this would be his 6th year. So it just kind of depends on the school where you are too. I mean, if Missouri is fine with just kind of like, we'll be competitive every so often, that's okay. Then okay, you roll with Barry Odom, and you understand what you're going to get. If you're a school like Kentucky that's like, you know what, just don't embarrass us before basketball season starts. And they haven't really done that. I mean, 5-7 at Kentucky is fairly respectable. But yeah, it just.
But at the same time, it is still like 5-7, and they've had enough of those years where they don't even make bowl eligibility. Where at this point, I feel like the Kentucky football expectations, and a lot of this comes down to Stoops being there, is to at least get that 6th win and get that bowl eligibility at this point.
Yeah, and it'll be interesting to see if it changes the expectation of the program at Kentucky. Like if they should beat Georgia and go on to play in the SEC championship game, is there a lot of disappointment? Is there a lot of frustration next year if they kind of fall back to earth a little bit?
Yeah. Oof, it's going to be weird. And we can't talk about both Kentucky and Missouri without talking a little bit about something called pass interference. Because at the end of the Kentucky-Missouri game, and this is something that apparently Kentucky's gotten very good at this season. You might remember I don't know if you remember or not, but I remember discussion after the Mississippi State and Kentucky game about how there were a couple of very questionable pass interference calls in that game. One of which being a Kentucky tight end jumping on the back of a Mississippi State defender, catching the ball, and it being a pass interference call on the Mississippi State defender. Well, towards the end of the game, and if you guys need to pull it up, you should. There was another questionable call where again another Kentucky receiver runs into the end zone. He runs directly into the Missouri defender, who is turned and facing the quarterback. He's facing the play itself. He runs into the defender. He has his arms out, kind of hitting the Missouri defender in the face mask a lot. He jumps over the Missouri defender, kind of climbs on his back to get it. They call pass interference on the Missouri defender. And so it just is weird. Did you guys happen to see that play? Please tell me that you've looked it up at this point.
I've not seen it.
I'm trying to find it right now. Whoa. So the Kentucky guy has his hand on the guy's like head.
Yep.
As he's jumping up. Granted, the guy from Missouri has his arm in the guy's armpit a little bit, but
yeah, but like
that's
how
no
much?
call.
How much of that do you think? Yeah, how much of that do you think is caused by the Missouri defender just being there and the Kentucky player running into him first, or the Missouri defender should have not been standing there and should have been backpedaling more at that point? Because I mean, if you watch it in slow motion, and that's the big thing, you watch it in slow mo, you watch the replay. I mean, the defender does kind of have his arm extended and everything, but the Kentucky player just straight up runs directly into him.
Yeah, and like what they always talk about with calls like that is as long as the defender has eyes on the ball and is making a play for it, they'll let a lot of stuff go. And clearly that's what was happening. They were both battling for it. So like that's his ground too, you know?
Yep.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't have any idea how to
yeah, that's a bad call. Like that should just be like a no call period.
Yeah, I mean, give credit to Terry Wilson and CJ Conrad for scoring on the next play.
Yeah, sure.
to finish the count. Give credit to the Kentucky punt returner. I mean, there's a guy that deserves more credit that isn't getting credit. That there's a punt returner that scored a 67-yard touchdown to get the game close, to that point to begin with. But at the end of the game, man, you just hate to see a game decided off of questionable officiating, and give credit to Terry Wilson and CJ Conrad because there's still nothing is decided at that point. They just get another chance and they run a better play. But man, that's what is, I feel like is when I look at Missouri's season so far to bring it back to what we're talking about. You look at Missouri's season so far and you look at the fact that they have had a really, really tough schedule playing the two best teams in the conference. Including and then having to go to Florida like on the road this year, that sort of thing. To lose like that to a ranked Kentucky team is one of those things I feel like is almost forgivable in a way. Like maybe you could have done more against Kentucky, but Kentucky's, scoring wise, they're like the best scoring defense in the country right now at this point. It's just hard to make sense of Missouri right now because, they're not doing well. Yeah, they haven't won a conference game. But, they kind of got screwed a little bit against Kentucky maybe. Yeah, they, South Carolina barely beat them in one of the strangest games of the season so far.
Right.
Kind of just feel more pity.
That was such a weird game.
Kind of feel more pity than anything else. We need to talk about South Carolina just a little bit. Obviously, they're not having as terrible a season, but how surprised are you guys that they have not really looked like second in the West contenders, knowing that they were returning quarterback, returning, good wide receiver core, getting back their most talented wide receiver from injury last season, and decent running backs returning as well. They were 5-3 in conference last year, so it's not like they're far off from that mark right now at 3-3. But how surprised are you guys at South Carolina's performance? I know, Chandler, you had touched on it just a little bit earlier, but maybe give just a little bit more detail about South Carolina, your thoughts on them as of right now this season.
Yeah, I mean, I really thought that they were gonna be in that spot, in that second in the East spot because I think that I thought that Jake Bentley and Deebo Samuel were going to be a great combo, and Bentley's been up some, and when he's played, he hasn't been as good as I think people thought he would be, and I think that's disappointing. If you're South Carolina, that's also a little bit to the extent that that's just kind of who South Carolina is, and I don't know. I mean, maybe we bought into some hype that shouldn't really have existed. Because last year, South Carolina was second East, but the East outside of Georgia was a mess. I mean, you had
it was really bad.
Yeah.
You had obviously Florida fired a coach halfway through the season, and then appointed a guy as interim that they knew was not going to be particularly successful, so that they wouldn't get emotional and hire somebody they shouldn't hire. Missouri was off to a terrible start last year. Vanderbilt was pretty bad last year, so a lot of things were a mess. And so South Carolina just took advantage of a rough situation. And, maybe what we're seeing right now is the East stabilizing a little bit. And, because I don't think anybody's expecting Kentucky to hang around in that top 2 or 3 in the East, but Florida kind of looks like Florida again. Georgia looks like they're probably about to start a nice little run there at the top. So maybe we're seeing things stabilizing a little bit, and South Carolina's fallen back to where they've always kind of supposed to have been.
Yeah, I like that you use the word stabilize, because that's kind of what it looks like to me. Is I don't even know if this is much of South Carolina falling back. I think this is South Carolina being still stable, like stabilized from last year. And last year they just happened to be better off than those teams that were more of a mess. And this year, a lot of those teams that were a mess have fixed things, and South Carolina is the exact same team.
Yeah,
and that's where you're absolutely right. And yeah, we probably bought into the hype a little bit more. I know I did. I looked at him and thought, hey, look, yeah, there's no reason they can't do it again. Another year of experience and more returning talent, blah, blah, blah. But at the end of the day, yeah, I don't know. It looks like they're the exact same team, and it's not good enough for what the East is doing right now. Keith, your thoughts on South Carolina?
I think you just cleared your throat so hard. You cleared your throat. No, you cleared your throat so hard that it dropped you from the podcast for a moment. Like the signal just completely cut out. See you later. Yep. No, I think I was one of the ones that didn't really buy into their hype. Mostly because, again, they kind of sleepwalked into that second spot last year because the East was so bad, and a lot of their games last year were really close. And so I just kind of figured that, they're bringing in largely the same team, and Will Muschamp is still their coach. So they'll probably stay pretty close to the same just in terms of like talent and what they're going to do every game. But some of the teams around them were going to get better. So it's not super surprising to me. They're still fourth in the East.
But
I think the biggest thing was that Kentucky kind of came out of nowhere, and it's where it took their spot in the top 4.
Yeah, and that's where I think the thing about South Carolina that is that they're fourth in the East, but they also have never really looked like they'd be any better than that at any point in the season.
Yeah, exactly.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but
no, I was done anyway.
All right, fair enough.
With this podcast.
Oh no, he's gonna clear his throat out of here again. Oh man, well let's jump up to the Florida Gators. Then Keith, you were the one who did predict. You predicted Florida number 1, but you did predict Florida to be better off than I think most of the rest of us did. Chandler I stand corrected. I was the only one that didn't pick Florida in the top 3. Both Chandler and Rowe had them number 2 in the East. So I stand corrected. We all had them. Yeah, I was the one who had them lowest. Okay, never mind. But the Florida Gators, at this point in the season, they're coming out of what they came out of. Coming out of not just this past season, but the past couple of seasons. Coming out of having to fire a coach mid-season. All of that just delightful stuff that Florida's had to deal with.
Really things that you look forward to as a program.
Yeah, they do have 4 wins in the conference. Tennessee, Mississippi State, that big LSU game, and then against Vanderbilt. Right now, let's just say that things continue the way that they should in the conference, considering the next games are Missouri and South Carolina, and things hold there. Let's say they end 6-2, they finish 3rd in the East. I know that's not second or first place, but is this a successful season considering new head coach, where they came out of? Like, how satisfied will Florida be if the season continues and ends the way that it looks like it's going to end?
Yeah, finishing with all losses from here on out would be a disappointment. But like if we had talked realistically that Florida was going to improve to like 6-6 or maybe 7-5, I think that was going to be a successful season, just because there was a lot of doubt about the talent level of the players at Florida, especially when you compare it to kind of the standard that they've held for themselves. When you go back and you look at Jim McElwain, his early success came off of, Will Muschamp's recruits, especially off the strength of their really good defense. And so Jim McElwain just did not recruit well. There's some talented players at Florida for sure. Piron's showing every week that he's a really good running back. Granted, he's benefiting a whole lot from the system that Mullen's putting in. But McElwain was treating 4-star players like they were 5-star players, and the 4-star recruit was kind of the ceiling for Florida. So they're getting a lot of 3-star guys, a couple of 4-star guys here and there, and that was really it. So and on top of that, like the 4-star guys weren't really reaching what their potential was anyway. And so there was a lot of optimism that Dan Mullen being a guy that develops talent well. There was some optimism that he would kind of slot guys correctly with their development, and that's been true for the most part. Franks has been, outside of Saturday, he's been a huge surprise. So kind of got off the question a little bit, but
and I'm pretty upset about it.
Clearly, I'm going to exit the podcast again.
Just becoming a thing that keeps you.
Yep, my weekly exodus from the podcast after clearing my throat.
Keith is just putting himself under review at this point.
I appreciate
it. But no, like they should beat Mizzou. They should beat South Carolina. They should beat Idaho.
Man, don't overlook the Vandals.
Yeah, I am.
They're not even Division I anymore, I don't think.
I don't even think they're a division anymore.
They're, but and then they finish up at Florida State. So for the rest of the year, they don't leave the state of Florida, which is nice. Florida State's terrible this year, but that's a rivalry game, so who the heck knows what's going to happen there. But
I know it's going to happen.
Realistically, if you win 3 out of your last 4, and after going 4-8, you're 9-3. That's big time, especially kind of putting yourself back on the map in terms of recruiting, which is desperately needed there.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, definitely. And you talked a little bit about the Dan Mullen scheme and everything on offense. I do want to mention this. I really enjoy the fact that Dan Mullen is making Felipe Franks run on some read options every now and then, because he
guys, you keep mispronouncing his name. His name is Don Merlins.
I'm sorry. It's really interesting to me to watch Dan Mullen make his quarterback Don Merlins run a lot on read options. Because he just kind of seems lost. It looks like he's never really run before in his life,
which is so weird because Franks is an athletic guy. Like they were showing footage of him playing basketball, and like he's a pretty good basketball player actually. So like you would think that scrambling out of the pocket and putting one foot in front of the other successfully, going down the field would be something that would look natural to a guy.
No, we jokingly said it looked like he got back to the huddle after every single one. I was like, all right, guys, was that it? Was that did I do it? I just kind of went, and I don't really know if that was what I was being asked for.
He kind of reminds me of watching the good Dr. Bo Wallace run.
Right.
Because it looked like if you watch like a National Geographic special of like a wounded giraffe running from a lion, that's always what it looked like when Bo ran. And
Or just it's just a like newborn giraffe, you know.
He's not a particularly unathletic individual. It just doesn't look right.
No, like Felipe Franks is a pocket passer. We see that now.
Yeah, in the third quarter, he kind of scrambled out of the pocket and was like, he had nobody in front of him, and he was still looking to pass. And it's like, dude, just run it. And then you get a very clear picture of why he was still looking to pass. And it took him about 45 minutes to pick up 12 yards.
Yeah, he reminds me a little bit of Aaron Murray from Georgia in that regard. Like Aaron Murray was the definition of a statue in the backfield. And then every now and then, if he got pressure, he just had in his head, okay, it's time to scramble. It just was like,
Murray was actually like kind of quick once he got moving.
But it just didn't look like it.
Yeah. It was just really weird. Also, Aaron Murray's head sits about 12 feet above his shoulder. So
yeah, it's strange.
It looked really weird whenever he would run it because his body would be hunched a little bit, but his head was straight up in the air.
I once heard a defender in a different sport. He looked like a very talented baby giraffe.
Yep.
In that he was just kind of all over the place with his lankiness, but like it just looked chaotic, but he seemed to do it all right. Mm-hmm. And with Franks, it kind of looks like he's one of those robots that they've designed to walk. You know, like you see the YouTube videos of, and it's like, look at this robot's been designed to step over obstacles. That's what he looks like when he's running. Yeah, it's like the legs go.
Sort of reminds me of Corey Brewer from those late 2000s Florida basketball teams where they called him the drunken dribbler.
He was
like he always got wherever he wanted to go, but he actually looked drunk while he was doing it.
Poetry in motion with Corey Brewer. I remember a post-game interview one time after he had the best three-point shooting night of his career, and they went, "How were you just feeling good out there tonight?" And he went, "Nah, I think it was all a mistake." He's like, I've never done that before in my life. Probably will never do it again. I don't know what was going on. So I like that guy.
What a guy! Yeah,
I like that guy a lot. All right, back on subject real quick, so we can do this whole thing. Chandler, Florida seems to be again stabilizing, as you mentioned. It seems to be a key word with Florida. They're stabilizing in a good way, kind of getting out of the chaos, giving consistent results. Todd Grantham seems to be calling a heck of a defensive scheme out there this season so far. He seems to have the personnel that matches his let's just blitz on every play.
I still think Todd Grantham is an above average defensive coordinator whose scheme and play calling will lose you one absolutely crippling game a year.
Oh yeah, no, fully agreed. Fully agreed. But so far it's been working on a more efficient level, it seems. But do you think, looking down the line a little bit here, do you think that this puts Florida very quickly into the SEC East contention, like even say like next year or something like that? Or do you think that this is kind of their ceiling, knowing what, I guess, knowing the type of coach that Dave Mullen Dern Merlins has often been, doesn't lose games he's not supposed to, doesn't really win games that he is supposed to, or that he's not supposed to win. So knowing that that's kind of been his reputation. I mean, is this the ceiling sort of for Florida, consistently being in the top three, but maybe not quite pushing number 1 and 2 like they should, or maybe even getting to number 2 but never pushing number 1? Or do you think that Florida can very quickly become a contender?
Can I answer after signing day? I mean, and I say that half jokingly. I mean, really, the key to his success is going to be can he recruit successfully at Florida? He's playing with. I looked up Florida's recruiting rankings under McElwain, and McElwain had one top 10 class, and then a top 15 class, and then a couple of top 25 classes. So he was good but inconsistent. And so if Mullen can find the kind of guys that fit his scheme, because his offensive players don't really fit it this year. If he can find the guys that fit his scheme, and if he can get guys that fit his scheme that other programs really want a whole lot, like go out and recruit really good players, then yeah, I don't see any reason that they can't push back against Georgia, next year, because Georgia's really good, but I think Florida can get, if not equal, close enough talent to compete with them. And yeah, I mean, I think if you're a Florida fan, you've got to be absolutely thrilled with this season, because it seems like you're maybe a year ahead of where you thought you would be. And B, I think as you look at the recruits that are coming in, I mean, especially, I know they're really hyped about Emory Jones and what kind of quarterback he can be. Can he fit that system? Because I think if you find a quarterback that fits the system better than Felipe Franks does, then maybe right now, you probably still lose to Georgia, but you've got that Kentucky win, and, you're really putting up points a lot better than you have been so far, which is not to knock them at all this season, because they've been finding ways. It's kind of like watching a baseball team that can't really hit, but they can manufacture runs. They can play small ball and do things like that. Like, they're finding ways to score. They're playing great defense. And so if you add in a talented and skilled offense on top of that, then yeah, I think they absolutely can contend, and I think they will, sooner rather than later.
Yeah, Emory Jones is looking
for making a baseball reference, though, Chandler.
I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry.
This just feeds into Chandler and I's baseball podcast that we host
exactly.
every Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday.
Yeah, and we're actually hosting it right now.
Yeah, this is it. Welcome to Running Out the Bases.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, good.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, I don't know if you watched the whole game on Saturday, but Emory Jones got in some spot play to kind of run like a wildcat sort of offense, and he looked pretty good. He's super quick, which is a bit shocking when it's juxtaposed next to Felipe Franks, where it takes him an hour and a half to kind of spool up the engines. And
that's probably been the biggest advantage for Florida this season, is that Felipe Franks has been good enough that Emory Jones could just play spot play, can redshirt, because Mullen's quarterbacks tend to be bigger, kind of in that 225 to 255 range, and Emory Jones may not be the kind of player that can hold 250 pounds, but if you can get in, I think he came in at 185. If you can get him up to,
I think he can get to like 210.
Then he can be that durable kind of battering ram that Mullen quarterbacks tend to be.
Yeah, I think Mullen has realized that Franks is actually a pretty strong guy, so he can trust him on those QB keepers up the middle to like get 2 or 3 yards whenever he needs to, because he's been picking it up. So,
Keith, how long do you think it'll be until Florida fans start calling for Emory Jones over Felipe, even if Felipe is doing all right? Because I seem to remember that happening at Mississippi State with like 1 year after Tyler Russell broke every passing record the school had, which didn't mean anything because they had no history of passing. Fans were instantly like, put in Prescott, Russell's garbage. And like Tyler hadn't even done anything yet. So how long do you think that'll happen?
Yeah. I don't know. Florida fans have been really well, I'm not going to go that far. They haven't been patient with quarterbacks because they immediately wanted to hang Jeff Driscoll after his like second year.
And let's not forget, there were a lot that were even just like, why are we even starting Chris Leak? Let's just put Tebow in.
Yeah. Luckily, that was sort of an outlier because Florida fans really did like Chris Leak.
You've got the 5-star freshman, and it's like, yeah, you want to play with your new toy,
right? Yeah, and because like every time Tebow came in, he would run for 10 yards, or he would throw like a little hitch route or something like that, or like do the jump pass, and then would come right out, and fans were kind of like, well, that was cool. But like Florida fans legitimately liked Chris Leak. He was he was a good quarterback given what tools he had to work with. But yeah, I think that they're going to be patient, and I think that part of what helps that is that we haven't seen a whole lot of Emory Jones. If he starts coming in and plays really well, then you'll have a situation like you had at Bama where like you like Jalen Hurts, but Tua's sexier and flashier, so you want to see that happen.
And indisputably better.
Right, but it's hard to argue about results when your starting quarterback has lost one game in like 2 years or whatever it was.
Yeah, Jalen Hurts is trash. That's all I really. I mean, he's obviously
one of the worst quarterbacks to ever play the game, really.
Yeah. All right. Obviously, there's some SEC East teams that we haven't really touched on in this segment. For example, Vanderbilt being like probably the worst good team I've ever seen. Like every time I watch them, I'm like, man, this team's pretty good. And then they just don't win a whole lot, but I don't really feel bad for them because they're also still pretty good. A lot of they actually have a conference win. But
it'd be great if they could get like a good coach.
I know, seriously. I mean, Keyshawn Vaughn is so much fun to watch. Shermer, of course, is just like flinging the ball around. And then that defense is like sneaky good. But anyway, we'll touch on that in just a minute here. Looking ahead to next week. Oh, gosh, week 10 already? Is that right? Jeez, that's crazy. There's 2 random non-conference games, and I'm just going to run down in a particular order between you guys and then myself who actually mentions these or actually gives us a quick statement on these games. First up, Charlotte at Tennessee. This is clearly a late season tune-up. Chandler, your thoughts?
I'm just saying that it's the little things, the little things that always hang around. It's the little things that always bring you down.
Chandler's muted.
Good Charlotte for life. This is the anthem.
Oh my God!
Come on.
All right, we're just gonna move on for that one. Sorry, Charlotte at Tennessee. Keith, Louisiana Tech at Mississippi State. Mississippi State coming off of a victory over Texas A&M. Louisiana Tech. This is like homecoming, so this is supposed to be. They play often, and it seems to always be like a close game. And Louisiana Tech so far this year only has a couple of losses, one of which being a 28-7 loss to UAB randomly. The other being a 38-21 loss against LSU. They hung 21 on LSU. So La Tech, a weird team here. But what do you think about this matchup between the Bulldogs and the Bulldogs?
Hey, don't sleep on UAB. They are like, what, 2 or 3 years removed from not even existing, and now they're like a ranked team.
Unbelievable.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, State's also kind of a weird team. Seems like with State, you've got a sort of a Jekyll and Hyde situation going on. It's at State. I think they'll be all right as long as Joe Moorhead takes his coaching medicine again before the game and doesn't record an episode of Punk'd on Saturday.
Good grief.
Yeah. Ashton Kutcher's going to be in Starkville.
Surprise! Joe Moorhead is actually Ashton Kutcher.
It's just Ashton Kutcher in a suit. I remember having former friends in undergrad one time tell me that I reminded them of Ashton Kutcher, and that's why I say former friends.
Yeah, it's probably a good idea that you got rid of them as soon as you could.
Yep. South Carolina goes to Oxford to battle Ole Miss. Interesting game here between two teams that are fighting for anything here. South Carolina wants to get another conference win, stay in the top 4 of the East. Ole Miss wants to avoid being down near the bottom if they can help it. I was going to give a little bit more of a preview of this one, but I'm going to let Chandler tell you how ugly he thinks this game's going to be. Chandler?
It's going to be bad. Look, here's the problem. I think this is Ole Miss's last chance at a win for this season, because I don't think that their defense has shown that it's capable of stopping teams that don't consistently stop themselves. And South Carolina does that, and I don't feel great about it. So, I don't know. I mean, you've got two teams that are struggling. They don't really have an identity. They don't know what's going on, and they're going to play at 11 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah,
and that's
I was
really
about
all
to
you can
say
say.
it's a morning game at Vaught Hemingway, so it's
I'm so
confusing.
thankful. I'm so thankful for morning games, so I can just get it out of the way and just
Get it over
enjoy
with
the rest of
and
my day.
Gosh.
Go on about your day. Yeah.
Some friends here in town are doing a big pot of gumbo for the Alabama LSU game. I can enjoy that without having to worry about anything else. So,
Gumbo sounds so good.
If you ask anyone from the state of Louisiana, though, they'll tell you that unless it was cooked in the state of Louisiana, it doesn't count as being good food. So,
yeah, they're probably not wrong, but I'm still going to go eat it.
yeah, I mean, they are. But anyway, Texas A&M at Auburn. This is an interesting turn of events because A&M is the ranked team and Auburn is not at this point. Texas A&M and Auburn, of course. This is a team that two teams with what's supposed to be, good defenses. A&M, I was surprised at just how good they've been in random categories. They were the top going into the loss to Mississippi State this past weekend. They were the top rush defense in the country and the top third down defense in the country. Very weird things to be good at. Of course, they lost to Mississippi State, and Auburn has been sliding so far on the season. Which, by the way, I want to point out once again, any that I said before the season started. This is like the only thing I've gotten right on the year outside of Florida State's entire schedule so far. But that Auburn, after their best years, have instantly followed it up with an 8-5 season. So now Auburn is firmly in the battle to try to get to 8 wins if they can. So A&M and Auburn's an interesting game between two teams that we're hoping for a little bit more. I mean, A&M's doing okay. They're not out of the rankings, but this will be a weird matchup between two what appears to be mediocre teams. Auburn borderline bad this season. Weird matchup here. Weird matchup. Missouri and Florida. I'm going to turn this one over to Keith here to give us a little bit of a preview. This is a game with some big-time SEC East implications as far as how the end of the year rankings will turn up, sort of. But anyway, Missouri at Florida. Missouri battling for relevance. Florida battling to stay up in the top 3. Keith, your thoughts?
Yeah, it's a good game to follow up Georgia with. That Florida Georgia game, the final wasn't really as indicative of what happened in the actual game. Kind of like what you said earlier, Florida really hung in there for 3/4 of the game, even took the lead coming out of half. Florida's defense has got a lot of heart in them. They've really turned it around after that Kentucky loss. And so this is going to be a good bounce back game for them. Again, I just think that Florida has to just stick with the run, really commit to it. And Missouri, again, you just have to not get embarrassed. Of course, they have a chance to win because Florida doesn't score a whole bunch of points. But Missouri's defense is also not very good. So,
yep,
that's it.
The big game in the East, big Georgia at Kentucky at prestigious Kroger Field. Chandler, talk to us a little bit about this matchup between the 1 and 2 ranked teams in the SEC East right now. 5-1 apiece. Wow.
It's going to be wild. I mean, I think conventional wisdom tells me that Georgia's going to win because I think Georgia, top to bottom, is more talented. But I think Kentucky's defense, can make Georgia put Jake Fromm in a place where he has to win a game. And that is not a great place for Georgia to be. I mean, it's not a terrible place for Georgia to be in, but it's not a great place for them to be in. And, I think Georgia's defense has been susceptible to giving up some points and doing some things like that. I mean, not anything egregious, but Kentucky, man, I mean, Kentucky's so impressive because they know who they are and they know what they want to do, and they're definitely going to try it. They're going to try to just run the ball right at them, and we'll kind of see what happens. I really don't know. I mean, I haven't looked at lines or anything yet. I think Georgia's just better, and I think they win, but man, you can't count out Kentucky at all this season. I mean, they just week after week have answered the bell, and they've been really impressive.
Yeah, they really have.
So can I interject for like 2 seconds here?
Okay.
1 Mississippi. 2 Mississippi. That was a weird choice to interject and then be silent, but I applaud your choice. Yeah.
Here's my choice. It was really interesting that Kentucky won the game with their passing game on Saturday. Benny Snell was pretty much shut down. He got, I think, like 64 yards in the game, and then suddenly Terry Wilson remembered that he was a quarterback and had an arm and threw for like 234 yards or 38 yards.
Quarterbacks throwing the ball is generally what you want.
It's crazy, right? But yeah, so just when we think that they're one-dimensional and that they can only run the ball, they turn around and win the game through the air. So good for them.
Yeah, I mean, it helps when your receivers can climb on the backs of Missouri defenders. And
saying he shouldn't have been there.
Those are the rules.
Anyway, the final matchup here, Alabama at LSU. LSU is climbing the rankings. I saw this weekend a bunch of people putting them in their first 4 of the college, football playoff.
That's why they're in the top 4. Like everybody knows that LSU is not going to stay within probably 20 points of Alabama. Everybody knows that LSU has no chance of making the playoff, but because you've got this game, because so much of college football is ratings driven and all this kind of stuff, you want as much hype as you can that we've got the number 1 and the number 4 team coming in. This is a preview of the playoff, all this kind of stuff, and Alabama's going to win by 60.
All right. Well, that was everything I was going to say. So,
sorry.
Thanks for that. Keith, I was going to ask you a question, but
my bad.
Not much else to say now. So, Keith, just say anything you want. Go for it. You got 2 sentences. Just anything. Go.
I don't think Alabama's going to win by 60, but they're going to win.
You know what? Mad respect for sticking with at least the topic. I gave you an option to talk about literally anything, and you at least stuck with the game. And you know what? That's good.
Bush did 9/11.
No. Hey, that was out of your 2 sentences. I'm sorry, Keith. You are muted. You are officially under review for next week. That's just I don't make the rules. I mean, I do make the rules, and I just made up that rule on the spot, and I enforce the rules. So, all right, let's get to some predictions so we can end this podcast and end all of our listeners' misery.
Mercifully.
Whew, goodness gracious. Let's start with the non-conference games. Charlotte at Tennessee. Keith, what's the spread?
Charlotte at Tennessee. Tennessee's a 21-point favorite.
Yes, they are. Our friend Roe, who could not join us tonight, has predicted Tennessee. Chandler, do you agree?
I do agree.
Keith, do you agree?
I think Charlotte puts up a fight here and wins the award for best effort, but loses.
They win. They win the character award.
They win the life championship that Butch Jones gave out.
Yeah. And I was thought so lowly of when I was playing sports back in the day that I honestly couldn't even win the spirit of the team award on any of the teams I was on.
I won that.
That they hated me. My coaches hated me so much. Anyway, Louisiana Tech at Mississippi State. Keith, the spread.
Mississippi State is a 21-point favorite.
Roe has predicted Mississippi State. That's surprising to me. It really is. I thought Louisiana Tech would be given a little bit more credit than that. But anyway, Roe has picked Mississippi State. Chandler?
I think State's going to take out a lot of that pin-up offensive frustration out on Louisiana Tech and win by a lot.
Thinking it's a Louisiana Lafayette situation all over again.
Probably, yeah.
Keith?
State.
Speaking of State and Louisiana Tech, was it last year that crazy fumble happened where it was like 3rd and 96?
Yeah, that was it. Yeah, that was a good one. That was a real good one. Love that. I think
somebody sent me that video with the Benny Hill music, the da 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 with that built in. It was fantastic.
Oh man,
Pete, did you just say Jeff Driscoll's name again?
Maybe.
Okay. Driscoll had been.
I realized that wasn't that, but like there was his senior year when he played State. There was a similar situation where like he fumbled a snap or something like that, and he got kicked and went back like 40 yards. Or something.
Yeah, I was just trying to remember where he had been playing. Was he with? I thought he was with the Bears. Oh, he's with the Bengals now. Okay.
Yeah.
That's cool. I was trying to remember where he ended up. Anyway, all right. I think this is a closer. I don't think this is a 21-point victory. I think this is because in the past it's been a weird one. So I think it's a Mississippi State victory, but I think it could be a kind of weird, close victory. It could very well not be, but anyway, if I had to put money on it, I'd put it on a weird victory. All right, jumping into the conference now, let's go with South Carolina at Ole Miss. What is the spread, Keith?
South Carolina is a 1-point favorite on the road.
Ooh, interesting.
Wait, really?
Yep.
South Carolina is
opened at 2.5 earlier this afternoon in favor of Ole Miss.
Yep, it's a 1-point South Carolina. I checked, what's this? Teamrankings.com, which I've gotten all my stuff from in the past.
I was expecting to be like, I checked this, what's it called? Internet? Anyway.
I checked the internet.
Roe has picked South Carolina. Chandler?
I don't like either team. I think they're both bad. I don't know. I mean, Ole Miss can't stop anybody, and Ole Miss couldn't stop Arkansas, and Arkansas I think is better than South Carolina. So give me South Carolina.
All right, Keith.
Yeah, I don't understand the logic on that one, but I'll go South Carolina.
All right.
Wait, don't understand the logic on what?
Now I'm really confused about what you said, and I'm wondering if I misheard you.
I said Ole Miss couldn't stop Arkansas, and I think South Carolina's better than Arkansas, so I think South Carolina's going to win.
I thought I heard you say that you thought Arkansas was better than South Carolina.
No. Arkansas is not better than anybody.
We'll go back to the tapes tomorrow.
Yeah, actually, now that I think you might have accidentally said that.
Well, my big dog.
Yeah, because I was going to say that South Carolina is definitely better than Arkansas, and I was confused by your statement as well. So, okay, there we go. All right, now that we've cleared that up. Yeah, I think South Carolina is better than Arkansas, but I think that I'm still going to pick an Ole Miss victory here, mostly because South Carolina has disappointed me so much anytime I've picked them that I just refuse to pick them for anything anymore.
I picked them last week and then changed my mind to Tennessee, and Tennessee let me down like they always do.
I'd love to be wrong.
So I'm picking Ole Miss on that one. All right, Texas A&M at Auburn. Keith, what's the line?
Auburn is a 6-point favorite at home.
Wow,
interesting.
Really?
At Jordan Hare.
Man.
At Jordan Hare, sturdier. Roe has picked Texas A&M. Chandler, how about you?
Oh man, I think
when is that?
I think A&M.
All right, Keith, who you got?
I don't think this matters, but yeah, it's an 11 a.m. game. I'm going Texas A&M.
All right. I'm going to go against you guys again here. I'm thinking it's Auburn. I think this is one of those games that Auburn somehow pulls off in order to try to get closer to 8 wins. Oh, I didn't even mention like our rankings as far as predictions go so far. But best I can tell, Chandler and I are tied with 69 predictions to be the bottom.
Nice.
Roe has 70 and Keith somehow has 77, but I also think Keith is padding his stats over here. I think Keith is cheating.
I'm definitely adding an extra pick every other week.
All right, fair enough. At least you're honest about cheating. Missouri at Florida.
It checks out.
Thank you, Chandler, for running the numbers.
Our numbers guy.
Yeah, call all of your NFL Scout Missouri fan numbers guys and let them take a look at it. Missouri at Florida. Keith, what's the line?
Florida's a 6-point favorite at home.
Florida's by 6. Rowe takes Florida. Chandler.
Go Gator.
Keith.
Go Gator.
And I'm going to pick Florida. I'm going to refuse to say.
It's great to be a Florida Gator.
Just to be different.
To be a Florida Gator.
Georgia at Kentucky.
You guys also said that it was great to be a Florida Gator?
Yes.
That's a weird prep chant.
It was.
Which game we doing?
Georgia is a 10-point favorite over Kentucky.
10 points
on the road. Rowe has picked Georgia. Chandler, your thoughts?
I really want to see Kentucky do it, but until they do it, I will not pick them. So Georgia.
Keith?
I think Georgia wins, but I think this is going to be a really close game.
Yeah, I think Kentucky's got a defense that can give some issues here. And I don't know what kind of Jake Fromm we're going to have. He delivered some passes last week.
Yeah, he looked great yesterday.
Gosh,
oddly
he delivered some absolute strikes last week. It's really impressive. So I could see a lot of reasons why he would decide to take this week off. But
there's a Jake from State Farm joke in there somewhere.
But I just don't see any way that Kentucky really scores many points. Not just I don't really trust. I get the nasty feeling that they won't be able to move the ball on the ground, so they're going to do something crazy and put in like Gunnar Hoke and try to let Gunnar Hoke throw the ball around, and Georgia's going to capitalize on that. So the final game,
all in on quarterbacks named Gunnar.
Yeah, exactly. All in on them for sure, and all in on the hype for Alabama at LSU. Ooh, Keith, what's the line?
Game of the century.
Alabama's a 14.5-point favorite.
Rowe picks Alabama plus 1,000. Chandler,
who was the last team? Who was the last team that went to Baton Rouge when LSU was ranked in the top 10 and played there on a Saturday night and was favored by double digits
in the top 5? Like,
yeah. I mean, it's Alabama. Even if LSU can find a way to slow down Alabama's offense, I just don't think LSU's offense is going to be able to score on them.
No, this is going to be a blowout. I'm going to go ahead and mention that I'm picking Bama. Keith?
Yep, Bama. It'll be really fun to watch the showdown between Tua and the LSU secondary, but I just don't. Even if LSU holds Bama to 21 points, LSU is only going to score 10, maybe. You know,
I don't even know if they bothered testing the LSU secondary. I could easily see them just say
they could just load it up and just run it down the throat.
And just pound it down the middle and just beat them up.
Just do classic Alabama stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Give Damian and Najee Harris like 25 touches apiece, you know. They seriously run like 5 running backs deep over there at this point. It's
insane.
Crazy.
It's absolutely insane.
Yeah. All right, let's talk about the Noles. FSU is at North Carolina State this week. Keith, what's the line?
6.5-point dogs. The Seminoles are.
Yeah. Rowe is picking NC State. Chandler, what you think?
It's a weird game. NC State went into last week against Clemson, ranked and playing in a playoff game, playoff ramification game in the middle of October. A lot of respect there. And then they lost to Clemson, and then they lost to Dino Babers and Syracuse, I think. I didn't see the final score. I think they lost.
Yep.
But Florida State is still terrible.
And Florida State has also lost to Syracuse.
Yeah, and so to this game, I say you don't turn your back on the Wolfpack because you might wind up in a body bag. There you go. Great wrestling theme song.
Keith, you agree?
That really was a really fun game. By the way, Syracuse is ranked now.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're good. They're
Only
good.
have 2 losses to Pitt and Clemson. That's crazy. So
you don't go into the Carrier Dome and expect to walk out with a victory.
Yeah,
Good.
they don't even have air conditioning in there.
We've said it for years.
They're
good
just
job,
gonna
Orange Crush.
get dehydrated and cramp up and lose.
NC State.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to go with NC State as well on this
Florida
one.
State's bad.
And we have to have one random prediction, as we always do on the Pard Cursed. And I believe we gave that assignment to Chandler for tonight. So Chandler, hit us with a random prediction that we have to choose.
I told you guys this was not going to be a college football pick.
Okay.
We're going to step out of the world of college football, and we're going to step outside of the world of real sports. Real sports completely. And to give you a little bit of context, this last Monday night, former WWE champion Roman Reigns, real name Joe Anoa'i, who played defensive tackle at Georgia Tech, he announced to the WWE universe and to the sports world as a whole that he's had leukemia for 11 years. It's been in remission and it's come back. So he had to give up the title to go and get healthy, and all the best wishes to Joe and his family. It's a crazy thing. You think he's a guy your age with a young family, and it's just a terrible, terrible thing. But he was scheduled to be this Friday in a triple threat match against Brock Lesnar and Braun Strowman for the WWE Championship, and everybody knew Roman was going to win that. Well, all things considered, Roman's not in it anymore, and it's just a match between Braun Strowman and Brock Lesnar. I know you guys aren't up on your wrestling. Braun Strowman is like a 7'4" dude who his gimmick is just getting angry and flipping things over, and is awesome. And you know who Brock Lesnar is, so that's our pick of the week. You taking Brock for the title, or you taking Braun?
That just sounds like a metaphor. Like taking Brock or you taking Braun? You know, that's just what it comes down to.
Yep.
Sounds like a metaphor. I'm going to go ahead and go with Brock. I feel like from a marketing standpoint, returning him to title glory will probably bring in more ratings. But I think that this is something that I don't know enough about. So, Heath, how about you?
I'm going to go into a 45-minute talk now about all the reasons why Brock Lesnar is going to win the title.
Well, this has been running the clock. Thank you for tuning in. I'm in it.
History and statistics and analytics. Brock Lesnar wins.
I'm going with Braun.
Okay.
I think it's his time. I think he is destined to be the top guy in the company, especially in Roman's absence. One fun thing about these guys when they wrestle is they almost always get actually mad at each other in the ring. So they're actually throwing real blows a lot to the point that the last time they fought, Braun did something to make Brock mad, and Brock actually kneed him full force in the head, and Braun just mentally lost like 5 minutes of the match. So it's got the potential for some fireworks. But it's time to put the strap on Braun Strowman and let him be the guy. So I'm going Braun.
What strap?
You would be the one to know. So I love it.
It's
We'll get
still
Rose
Roman.
Pick at some point.
Our wrestling insider, Chandler.
That's him.
Chandler Rowalangas.
Yep. We're going to thank everyone for listening to this. That's Keith Harkins. I'm Joseph Craven. Shout out to Ro Hunter. And that, of course, is Sean Delar. Rob the Langdon.
Young Sheldon is next.
Yeah.
Rob the landowner.
Yeah,
No, you said.
Stay tuned for Young Sheldon. Before I do sign off, we, of course, want to express heartfelt, well wishes. I hate to, say the thoughts and prayers line because it feels so overdone and contrite. But there, of course, was a terrible disaster in Pittsburgh this past weekend. And we do want to mention that all of our prayers are with the families of the victims, and then also along with the family of I'm going to try to pronounce his name correctly, but Vikai Srivaddhanaprabha, the owner of Premier League soccer team Leicester City, who perished in a helicopter crash after the match on Saturday. Heartbreaking situation there as well. And we do wish the best for his family for sure in this difficult time. Sports is a good, distraction, I guess, from life, from the world at times. But sports also is a massive unifying factor for those that are in need. And hopefully some good comes out of these bad situations, and that people step up and look after and take care of the people around them in the process.
For sure.
This has been Running Out the Clock. I'm Joseph Craven. Thank you very much for listening. We will see you again later on.